This week on The Comic Box, I fail at calendars, Civil War gets super duper cereal, and I geek out over all things Moon Knight. Comics. Hey kids, and welcome to episode 2 of The Comic Box, part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. My name's Rob, and I am your friendly neighborhood comic geek. So let's crack open the comic box and jump straight into some comic book news. Mark Millar is getting yet another one of his comic books turned into a movie. Jupiter's Legacy follows the second generation of superpowered folk who decide to take over the United States in an effort to make it safer for humanity. I have not read this comic book. I have read some other of Mark Millar's stuff. Some really hits home with me, some doesn't. But it sounds like a cool premise for a film, so I am down. Over at Marvel, Thor Ragnarok is going to incorporate the Planet Hulk storyline. I was reading reports that we're going to see Thor with the shoulder armor paired up with a shaved-headed Thor. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. Shaved-headed. A Thor with no hair, no more Goldilocks, fighting together in the gladiator pits, which are run by Jeff Goldblum as the Grandmaster. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I read the character the Grandmaster, one of the elders of the universe, I did not hear chaos theory, a Grandmaster in my head. That's my best Jeff Goldblum. But on the other hand, we also have Benicio del Toro as the Collector, who I never would have cast in the role. So I do kind of like the idea that for these elders of the universe, these beings who have been around for millennia, to be very eclectic, and then played by these very good sort of character actors, these eclectic actors. A last little bit about Thor Ragnarok. I saw a synopsis, I don't know if it's the official one, but it states that the point of the film is Thor searching for the ultimate weapon to stop Ragnarok and reset the universe. I'm thinking Time Gem. It is one of the 2 Infinity Stones we have not seen yet. So somebody trying to reset the universe, Time Gem would totally be the thing to do that. It sounds like we have a villain for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Elizabeth Debicki is reportedly playing a character named Aisha, who is also known as Kismet. Now this one cuts pretty deep. This is sort of a deep cut for the Marvel Cosmic guys. But Kismet was created at the same time as Adam Warlock to sort of be his better half. For those that don't know who Adam Warlock is, he is really the central figure in all of the Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War sort of storylines opposite Thanos. So if getting a Kismet means we're closer to getting Adam Warlock, or maybe even getting Adam Warlock in Guardians 2, I am so on board. I could care less about Kismet, just give me Adam Warlock. Casting rumor for Captain Marvel, Brie Larson is reportedly in talks to star as the main character, Carol Danvers. Previously, she's been in not The Room, totally different movie. Oh, hi, Mark. Room, just Room, one word, Room. 21 Jump Street, and appeared a few times on Community as well. So if she can handle such a serious film as Room, as well as doing comedy like 21 Jump Street and Community, I'd like to think that she probably has the range necessary to play a character as complicated as Carol Danvers and take on a leading role in a film. Last bit of Marvel Cinematic Universe news, Civil War is now the highest-grossing film of 2016, bumping Deadpool out of the top slot, which is great news, not just because it's de-seating Deadpool. Deadpool was a wonderful movie as well, but the fact that the top 2 films now of 2016 are comic book movies, which means that even if we don't like some of the comic book movies that come out, if comic book movies are still viable and making money for Hollywood, it means we're going to keep seeing more, which means even with bad ones, you're also going to get great comic book movies like Civil War or like Guardians or like the first Avengers movie or whichever one happens to be your favorite. Over in TV land, we're getting an X-Men television show. FX is apparently moving ahead with a show called Legion, which features a character named David Haller, who we know in the comics as the son of Charles Xavier, a young man with multiple personality disorder where each personality has a different power. The pilot was written and executive produced by Fargo's Noah Hawley. I have not seen the Fargo show, but maybe that'll give you an indication of what you might be able to expect from this show. I'm cautious. I'm not even going to say optimistic. I don't see them really being able to pull it off. Unless maybe one of Legion's powers is he gets really lucky when he touches a metal door handle and it doesn't shock him. because they could afford to do that. Be like, did it shock you this time, Legion? Nope. Robert Kirkman, creator of The Walking Dead, is getting a second show that is a direct adaptation of one of his creator-owned Image books. Outcast. So, my baby don't mess around because she loves me so when the settler for show. Like, if that's not their theme song, I'm going to be upset. And I'm pretty sure it's not going to be, because not only is the show on Cinemax, it looks scary, man. The whole show centers around possession. It definitely looks creepy, so if you're a horror fan, if you're a Kirkman fan, and you have Cinemax, which, I don't even know, does that just come in like a normal cable package? I mostly do streaming, so that's all beyond me. But if you have Cinemax and you're a Robert Kirkman fan and you like scary stuff, check out Outcast. The first episode premieres on June 3rd. Comic book news. I have actual comic book news about actual comics. So much news this week, you guys. Marvel Now. We have a new teaser for fall. Just like DC, Marvel likes to put out these teaser images, except when Marvel does it, it's really just kind of frustrating because they'll put like one word on black, and that's supposed to be the teaser for what's coming, which I guess, yes, it makes you ask questions, but it's like seeing a teaser for a teaser trailer that is teasing the full trailer of a movie. Anyway, this single-page ad shows the Marvel Now logo, but the Now part of it is like cracked or looks like it's shattering or something. So maybe they're just saying that they're not following the Marvel Now thing anymore, but they already had All New, All Different, so I didn't know, wasn't that different from Marvel Now anyway? So who knows what it is, but Marvel is teasing something. I'm sure it's whatever is going to be the fallout of Civil War II, but who knows. Lastly, in comic book news, A Study in Pink. No, it's not as dirty as it sounds. It is the first episode of the Sherlock BBC show, and it has been a manga comic for quite some time, and the translation is finally complete, so the 52-page comic is coming soon to the USA and the UK. Let's move on to this week's releases. And this is where I need to make a confession. This is where I fail at calendars. When I said what I was going to read this week, I was looking at the Diamond Comics Distributors website so I would have a full list of what they were putting out, and I totally clicked on the wrong date. So I am an idiot. I told you guys I was going to read comics for this week that don't come out until next week, so I have a completely different list of comics. So if you were really excited for those 2 reviews, you have another week to wait, so I apologize. But let's talk about this week's comics. Batman Rebirth #1. Sort of an interesting piece. Duke Thomas is over from We Are Robin and is apparently going to be the new protege of Batman, which means he has a lot of them now, because I kind of thought he was also training Bluebird still. And then there was Orphan, the New 52 version of the Cassandra Cain Batgirl, but I guess he feels he needs another one. The key thing here is Duke Thomas is no longer going to be a Robin. He has a new suit, but they haven't given him a name yet. I don't know if I'm going to keep reading Batman. I might just keep an eye on the news from the comic so that I can figure out what's happening here and exactly who his sidekick is, because he's got like 14 of them now. Bruce Wayne's home for caped orphans. Superman Rebirth. Folks, skip this one. I don't mean to say bad things. We all love comics in every way, shape, and form. But there is nothing new coming out of this book that you would not have gotten simply by reading the end of the last Superman run or even just seeing the poster for Rebirth. So I really don't see the point of this comic. A better Rebirth comic was Green Lantern's #1. I wasn't sure what I was going to make of this. I was kind of like, do we really need yet another new Green Lantern in the form of Jessica Cruz? Like, yay women, yay female Green Lantern, but do we really need yet another new Green Lantern? It seems like every time we have a big event comic in DC, we need to introduce a new Green Lantern because sales, I guess. So this comic, Green Lanterns, pairs up Simon Baz, the recently newest Green Lantern, who's of Middle Eastern descent, with Jessica Cruz, who is a pretty white female, but is suffering from anxiety issues. I didn't think I was going to be that into it, but they really do play up the fact that they're like the extra Green Lanterns. So even though it's ridiculous, they're at least self-referential about it. The other thing that I liked about this book is this new pair very much feels like an updated version of Kyle Rayner and Jon Stewart, where Jessica, being the new Green Lantern who doesn't really know what's going on, is very much the Kyle Rayner type, where Simon Baz, in this comic even, he's dealing with issues of racism. He is very much the new Jon Stewart. So I kind of dig that pairing, and so even though it was something I didn't think I was really going to like that much, outside of it being Green Lantern, and I love all things Green Lantern, I think I'm hooked. I might actually enjoy this one over the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, but I will reserve judgment until that comic gets released. Paper Girls number 6. Brian K. Vaughan doesn't really write bad comics. He is the creator of Y the Last Man and Saga, which are two of my favorites. Paper Girls features a group of girls from the 80s who find themselves in a whole heap of trouble, and they wind up launched into 2016. It took some time to get there, too. He really took a long time to build that story where you had no idea where it was going or what was happening. So I have a lot of fun with it. I like the 80s kids' reactions to modern-day TV and smartphones. I'm sticking around for this one. Walking Dead number 55 also came out. I'm calling it now. Negan and Alpha are the comic book version of Tormund Giantsbane and Brienne of Tarth. That is a double nerd slap for you guys. Comics and Game of Thrones. More importantly, it looks like we're finally going to pick up the pace again in this book and launch into the Whisperer War coming up soon. Kirkman really has a habit of ramping things up and then really slowing it down so you get a lot of character moments and then ramping up the action again. So we are on our way back up that ramp, and I've been with Walking Dead not since the beginning. I had to play catch up a bit, but I've been with The Walking Dead for a long time. So even if he starts writing the comic terribly, it's kind of a habit book for me. I always got to pick up The Walking Dead, and I'm always excited to read it each month. Over at Marvel, Civil War 2 number 1. Civil War is going to be a 6-part series, but apparently, like all big Marvel events, there's going to be 1,000,001 tie-ins. Like there's a Guardians of the Galaxy tie-in for Civil War. It takes place on Earth, but for some reason, we need to know the opinions of a space raccoon. The point is, this issue, spoilers, okay? Big spoilers. 3, 2, 1. People die in this issue. It gets super serious, super fast. So the Civil War II plot is surrounding Iron Man and Captain Marvel, who are on opposite sides of this argument of whether or not they should utilize the abilities of an Inhuman who can see the future. To Iron Man, it just means he sees one possible future, so it's not okay to jump in and take action before you actually know what's happening. It's very sort of Minority Report in that sense. Where Captain Marvel figures, no, if we know that there's a disaster coming, we need to take action now to try and stop it. So what happens is this Inhuman gets a vision of Thanos on Earth looking for a cosmic cube, and so Captain Marvel launches into action, and the result is both War Machine and She-Hulk are killed. So we already know that the stakes are pretty high in this fight. That was a bad one. I apologize. Moving on anyway. My poll list for next week is, oddly enough, the same as my poll list for last week because I was wrong last week. So the only 2 comics right now that I'm looking forward to reading are Green Lantern Edge of Oblivion number 6, which will tie off that story, and Wonder Woman Rebirth number 1, which I'm reading because it's written by Greg Rucka. For more details on that, you can listen to last week's podcast. Topic of the week. All right then. My topic of the week this week is versatility. And by that, I mean a character being interpreted many, many different ways. And how even though we might love that character, it's important for us to step back and give the creators a little bit of space to do something they want to do with the character, because you never know when it's going to turn out to be something amazing. And to me, the perfect example of that is the Marvel Comics character Moon Knight. He was a mercenary named Mark Spector who fell dying at the feet of a statue of the Egyptian moon god Khonshu. He woke up the next morning, he felt stronger, he felt refreshed. He gave credit to this god and decided that he was going to be the avatar of that god on Earth. And then he kind of went back and forth as to whether or not he had superpowers. At some point, they were saying that he would get stronger as the moon got full, and then as the moon receded down to a sliver, he would return to just normal human strength. That's really come and gone with the character. Beyond that, He's basically Marvel's version of Batman, in that he's a rich guy with a whole bunch of gadgets and things that are directly related to his theme, in this case the moon, with the exception that he has multiple secret identities. He has an identity where he is a very rich playboy about town. He has an identity where he is a cabbie, so he can sort of talk to the slums. Think of it as sort of his version of Matches Malone. And he has another identity, which is the mercenary in him. And of course, Moon Knight. So he keeps all of those separate in his mind as different personalities, and even demands that people call him, the people who know he has all of these different identities, he demands that they call him by whatever personality he is being at that time. A lot of it was very sort of noir sort of stories. There were several different series and miniseries that spun out of that. And then for me, I jumped on buying individual issues at Moon Knight Volume 3, which was the 2006 run by Charlie Huston and David Finch on art. And a lot of people didn't like this Moon Knight, but I was a big fan. I liked the art and I liked how gritty it was. And it was showing how Moon Knight was very much sort of this brutal warrior on the streets, and also how broken of a man he had become after being a vigilante and not having any particular superpowers. He got beat up really bad and his body just didn't work that well. And after that series ended, it moved on to Volume 4 by Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev, and now he had his multiple personalities replaced with Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Captain America. It was a really kind of trippy book, but again, a very fun take on the character. Then it moved into Volume 5, written by Warren Ellis, where now, again, he has new personalities. He introduces himself as Mr. Knight, and he is the guardian of those who travel by night. He wears just a plain white suit with sort of a white face mask and a little moon symbol on the forehead. And it is a very different book. It's, again, sort of noir, some horror stories, and they're all single issues. They're all one-and-done issues, which is very different. And now we have Volume 6 by Jeff Lemire, where Moon Knight is trapped in a mental institution, and they're trying to convince him that all of this Moon Knight stuff is just in his head. So, again, they're playing along with this idea of his mental illness. It's kind of like that Buffy episode, where she's flashing back and forth between sort of the Buffyverse and what we'll call the real world, and she's having trouble telling what's real. That's what we're seeing from this volume of Moon Knight. The point I'm making is characters can get reinterpreted in vastly different ways and still be amazing comics. So even though we read that something is coming up with the character, or a character is getting killed or changed or a big status quo shift, that good things can come out of that. And that comic books, at their core, are stories. So if that writer feels they need to go off in a wild direction in order to tell their story, the point I want to make to you is, let's let them do that without throwing a bunch of hate their way. It might be a bad story. We might not like it in the end. But the point is, they got to tell the story that they wanted to tell. They got to take a shot at it. And it's important that they get the chance to do that, because if we don't let people do something different every once in a while, we're just going to get the same thing over and over. That's what back issues are for. If you want to read something old, go back and read the back issues. I think I like doing that too much. All right, so that is our show for this week, guys. If you have thoughts on Moon Knight, if you hate the fact that they keep changing the character and you want it to stay consistent, or if you love the fact that it changes with every single volume, let me know. You can reach out to me on Twitter. I am at Knowby, that is at KNOWBY, or I finally set up an email so you can get to me at thecomicboxpodcast@gmail.com. So I hope you enjoy the show, and until next week, this is Rob, your friendly neighborhood comic geek, closing the comic box. Ba-ba-da-ba-da, and the music. Ba-ba-da-ba-da, episode's over. Ba-ba-da-ba-da, we like comics, but we hope you do. A-do, hoo-ah, ba-da-ba-da-da-ba-da-ba-da. Seriously, though, Moon Knight has a helicopter pilot who is French, has a thin mustache, and is called Frenchie.